to look down at is your camera below? Yeah. Try and look into the
It's
camera.
below me.
Yeah, look into the camera like you're looking at somebody, So a little bit about yourself, and then I'll just kind of jump into a few questions. They're going to be real easy questions too.
My name is Michelle Dodds, and I've worked here at the City of Phoenix since, the end of 1996. So I've been around for a while. I moved to Arizona from Florida, so it was another warm environment, but a very dry one. And so I have to say, I enjoy the dry weather here in Arizona. And I've worked initially for the planning department. And the planning department around 2010, I think, merged with historic preservation and the development department. And so about 2011, I moved into the historic preservation division, and been so blessed to be the historic preservation officer for almost 10 years now.
In the West, you think of everything as being new. And so why would we want to save our buildings? Why do we want to save anything?
So much a part of our identity and who we are. And, it's what makes us unique and different from other places. There was a lot of controversy back around 2011. And there were competing interests that really kind of devastated in terms of our historic neighborhoods. You had, windows are such an important character defining feature of a historic property. And, there were these grants available to have people replace their windows with things that are more energy efficient. Right. At the same time, we were trying to get people to preserve those windows because they're a character defining feature. And so that was a real clash, right? Yeah. It didn't need to be, because there are many things you could do to make your windows more energy efficient other than replacing them. And so, it was a really challenging time for the office. And that's when I came in, was kind of in during that time. Wow. So the council, they were trying to make everything at the city is trying to get everything through the process more quickly. It's all about efficiency. And not that historic preservation can't be efficient, it can be, but it was a real turning point. So they took away the permit requirement for people replacing windows. As long as you weren't changing the opening size, you could replace it with, so you saw a lot of people removing, whether wood, steel casement or whatever, and putting these, vinyl windows in that have a lifespan of, next to nothing. And all these windows were going into the landfill. Lost a lot of integrity in our historic neighborhoods because of that.
Right.
What's really important about preservation, you can think, well, we can preserve our history in books and in documents, but nothing is quite the same as occupying the space where these buildings stood. To be in that space and feel that history is so much different than just reading about it in a book. And being in those spaces that have a history, whether it's cultural significance, whether it's architectural significance, whatever the case may be, having those living, tangible things and being in those spaces is very different than being in a newer building. And so, these buildings tell the story of our history, and it's important to try to preserve. You can't preserve everything, but let's try to preserve a good representation of these different time periods and what was important. It's part of our identity, right? If we don't preserve these buildings, we're going to look like any place else. They really make us stand out as different and unique from other cities. And so, we may not have a lot of buildings to look at from the 19th century. Mm-hmm. We have a few left from the 19th century, and we're trying very much to promote those and save those. and so it's really important. Those numbers have dwindled over the years. And so we're really trying to do our best to preserve as many as we can that are left. And we know over time we'll lose some buildings. It happens whether it's a fire or, there's a development that comes along and the preservation ordinance in Phoenix, it doesn't preserve something forever, right? When it's designated on the Phoenix Register, after 1 year, a 1 year wait or delay in demolition, properties can be demolished. So, our preservation ordinance, given we're in Arizona and it's very much a private property rights state,
Right.
Our ordinance delays demolition. It doesn't necessarily prevent demolition. And I think people think, oh, if it's designated on the Phoenix Register, it'll always be here.
Right.
Hope that it will be here, but it really is up to the property owners. And it's really important that when people, invest in buying a historic building, something that's on the register, especially, that they be good stewards of that building, because they're fragile. These buildings are fragile, and that, not that they're not well made, they are very well made, but they're fragile because if you get an insensitive owner that purchases them, they can make insensitive changes that take away the integrity of that building, or they can demolish the building. And so, it's really important, I think, when people purchase a building that's historic, that they know that they're taking on an added responsibility, and that they need to be good stewards of that building, and they need to understand what that means. And so, we really appreciate our historic neighborhoods, our owners of historic properties, because we know it's a little extra effort, right, to maintain those buildings. And, you can't do whatever you want and maintain the integrity of that historic property. So, we really appreciate the people that are good stewards of these buildings, because they're leaving something for next generations.
Absolutely.
Our Historic Preservation Commission works really hard trying to think of ways to help, prevent or delay demolition of buildings that are important. Not only are those on the Phoenix Register, but those that may be, eligible for the register, or that have potential to be on the register someday. And so one of the things the commission did back in 2016 was they came up with this 30-day demolition hold, for properties that aren't on the register. So, previous to this building code change, someone could walk in, get a demolition permit, walk out the door, and demolish the property the same day. It was that easy. No one ever even knew about it. They just came in, received their permit, and out the door. And that was really unfortunate, because we lost a lot of buildings that way.
Yeah.
And so now, if someone comes in and they want to demolish and we're looking at commercial buildings that are 50 years of age or older. By commercial buildings, I mean anything but single family or duplex. Right. So commercial buildings 50 years of age or older, or anything that's 50 years of age in the downtown code area, that, people can't just come in and get a demo permit, and people don't even know, that their plans to demolish the building. They have to post a sign. We do notice. We send an email out to the preservation community, letting them know about it. And in some circumstances, our Historic Preservation Commission will decide they want to hear this case during that 30-day time period, and they want to talk to the developer, whoever is proposing the demolition, and find if there some, alternative to demolition that could preserve this building that has potential to be on our historic register. And so there have been several buildings that, have been saved through this process. And then there are some that, we still lost for various reasons. And this past year, we lost a building that was very important to people. And, it's really sad. And, you have to have a property owner that, kind of understands. Maybe they weren't aware it was an important building, but maybe they're like, okay, all right, we're not going to move forward with our plans. And that's happened. And so that process that's been in place since December of 2016 has saved some buildings, but we've lost a lot as well. But we see quite a few of those. So, that's just an example of one thing. The Historic Preservation Commission really spearheaded that change to the building code amendment, trying to save buildings that aren't currently protected by being on the Phoenix Register, because there are a lot of important buildings that aren't on the Phoenix Register. You might ask, well, why aren't they? And, well, that's because, we are a private property rights state. We have Prop 207 that passed in 2006. And so, if the city were to be proactive and put a historic preservation overlay on a property, putting it on the Phoenix Register, and they felt that that it was diminishing the value of their property, they could file a claim against the city. And so we just don't usually designate properties against the property owner's wishes.
Right.
Although we did in 2019.
Right.
I should say. No, in fact, quite the contrary. Now, I can't speak for individually designated properties, but for historic neighborhoods, the state historic preservation officer did a study years ago looking at those values, and the values increase.
Right.
It increases value in historic neighborhoods. So, we have that for the city of Phoenix. They did that study, and then they did an update to that study a few years ago. So yes, and right now we are under contract with Place Economics, City of Phoenix Historic Preservation Office, Place Economics out of Washington, D.C., where we have Donovan Kemma. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's kind of the rock star of the economics of preservation across the U.S. and internationally known. I'm sure he has spoken at every state historic preservation conference. And so he is doing a study for Phoenix. And that study is going to look not only at the economic impacts historic preservation has had on Phoenix, but also, impacts in terms of affordability, housing affordability, in terms of sustainability, and in terms of cultural value. And so they're looking at all the different aspects of the ways that historic preservation has benefited the city of Phoenix.
Wow.
And those studies are wonderful. You can go to Place Economics website and look at studies they've done for other cities. They just recently completed a study for LA. They've done it for New York City, well, you can imagine, coast to coast, they've done studies. And so I'm really excited, because it's one thing to say something that we all feel and know, but it's another thing to say, here's the data to prove it. And that's what we're getting right now. We've got some very dynamic people working in promoting preservation, that, when you work for a city, you can't, you have a job to do, but you're within these parameters that you have to work within. Right. And so these people that I mentioned are out in the community that are activists. Well, they're the real heroes there, that are able to push things and push to get things done.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So really nice to see you, and personally nice to catch up with you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for promoting historic preservation.
Of course. We'll talk to you very soon. I'll be in touch.
Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.